Go ahead and hit record. It's 12:40, time for us to get started. Welcome and thank you all for attending our session, Empower Students Through an Intervention Enrichment Period. In this session, we'll facilitate a discussion how to create time in a school schedule for a flex period. Nate,
Niemi.
Niemi. Okay, okay. We'll seek your learning expectations and tailor the presentation to what you wish to learn. Utilizing his personal experience of implementing a flex period at 3 high schools, which I find very impressive because that's usually pretty hard to do in a high school setting.
It is.
Participants will leave with strategies and tools to help them implement or enhance their current situation. So Nate Niemi, he has been in education for 32 years, 18 as an administrator. He was 2022 NKYECAD Albright Principal of the Year. And you're currently retired from public school and assistant principal at St. Henry High School. You're passionate about professional learning communities and implementing flex periods into the school day to ensure learning for all students. Thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. So just to start off is one of the things I am passionate about is this PLC work, working with schools and in our current schools. So a little quick history. I started off with PLC work back when I worked at Ryle High School. And we began that process to really get things going, to get collaborative work going on. And as part of that PLC process, for those of you who are involved in that, you know, there's 4 essential questions that are involved with there. What do we want students to know? How do we know they know it? What are we going to do when they don't know it? And what are we going to do when they already know it? And as part of that process, as we got working on that and developing it, is we determined that there needed to be time during the school day to offer the various assistance. So it's getting started and trying to buy in for the teachers. One of the big things is, and I think all of you would experience that, is what ways do you intervene with students? What ways do you support students when it's out in the school day? Because after school lets out, we lose control of what we can do and what we can't do. And a lot of schools try and do after school tutoring programs, but you got kids that have to be home. They got to take care of their siblings. They got jobs they got to go to. So what we had to do is figure out how do we do it within the school day. So as you know, you get your tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 types of instruction. And even in tier 1, there's going to be students who need some little extra support. Some of those are going to have to go into a tier 2. So we decided to build a flex time into our school day there and got the teacher buy-in through that whole process to do that. And so through the flex time is where we are able to do some additional interventions. So some of the questions that are coming up, you know, presentation wise, for example, Amanda says, how do you monitor teachers what they're planning on the intervention? So part of what we do is we have PLC time with our team. So for example, at Ryle and at Dixie, we might have 3 Algebra 1 teachers. And every week we build a common planning period where they would be able to meet as a team once a week. And they are going to then plan the interventions that needed to be. Ideally, in a PLC process, you're going to have formative assessments, common formative assessments that are going on. And each week you're going to be able to evaluate that. And then if we're working together as a team, we are then going to divide students up based on what those specific needs are. And there may be some enrichment needs, there may be some intervention needs. I was a science teacher, so it might be that some kids can do two-step problems without any problem. Some kids can do the first step but can't do the second step, and other kids can't even get past the first step. And so we might want to leverage each other's experiences and put kids in different places. So then what you have with that is how do you go about managing that time? And through the process, there's various different resources out there in regards to flex time manager type of things. I actually am part of a group here that have something called Student Optimized Services, which allows for teachers to place and track students where they need to go, and students have a choice of where they can go to. So you're trying to empower students to make choices based on what their needs are, as well as give the teachers power to do that. And I can show you a little bit of what that looks like for us. Because this is we're at St. Henry, we do the same thing here, and we started at Ryle and moved it over to Dixie. So in terms of how do you monitor teachers, that's going to be part of your monitoring in regards to where you see all the different things that they're doing through the SOS system, but also in those what you require for them in those team meetings. So what do their agendas look like? How are they establishing that? And really depends on how many people you have to assist with that process, because if you assist, if you're assisting with that process and you're in those meetings, then you can know exactly what you're doing. So that's how we monitor it, either by submissions of what their agendas are, or being able to stop in and work in those meetings. In regards to reading intervention, so with the flex time, you can set up the flex time. Obviously, when you're getting into high level tier 2, the number of hours and days that you're using it are important. And there's various different intervention programs, whether they're online or teacher directed. And we've used a lot of different options. I don't have one that I would say is definitely one that's better than the other. I think, as you guys know, teacher generated, teacher led kind of interventions are the best, rather than just sticking them on a computer program, especially on the high school level for that. So the more you can leverage your teachers' experiences and leverage their value in the instruction piece is better. So with a flex time, you can set up where you can organize students, and you could have students with the same teacher doing an intervention for a specific amount of time that you want. You could have it be done. We did it 2 days a week when I was at Dixie. So we established students who need some additional support, and it might be math skills, or it might be reading skills, or we would put those for 35 minutes twice a week with those teachers. Because the dilemma you have also is a lot of these students are struggling in classes, and they're failing. So you want to allow them the opportunity to be able to go to those other classes as well, in addition to the intervention piece. And that's what you always run into with the intervention stuff. So I don't really have a specific program that we use. I'm all about trying to establish that time, and then you as a school have to figure out what the program is that you would need to do. But the big thing is you have to find time within the school day, because once they leave the school day, those students, we lose control over what we can do. So building that time is a valuable piece of what we do. Another question: how do you make intervention time fluid to meet the needs of a variety of student needs, skills? And that's a great question. I am going to share, I'm just going to share with the system that we use, that I've used at the 3 schools. And it's called Student Optimized Services. It's an SOS system. And so I'm going to share my screen again and just show you from a student perspective what they see when because in the flex time, we want to offer options for those students. And so let me share again. So what you should see, hopefully, is what's called SOS time. All right, Mary, is that up there?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a student perspective in regards to what they see. So what the system is basically is an organizational tool to allow student choices. And so, for example, today is the 17th, and our students here at St. Henry, we had a assembly in the auditorium. So all students were in there, and you can see that there's a note there. So students can provide a note, or the teachers can provide a note in regards to what the purpose is for that. There's also a description that can also be provided, where if you're offering different things on different days, you can add a description. For this one, there's not one there. But when we go to the 23rd, you can see we're having an 11th grade class meeting, and so that's already been predetermined. But for tomorrow, this student is in the cafeteria, and what we do is in the system, it's the students are defaulted to one area, and then they have a choice. So if you go over and you click on this plus sign, you're going to see all the different options that the students can choose from. Now, students, the teachers will set up these options as being open to any student. So you can offer enrichment opportunities for students. So for example, we usually have our gym open during the week. And so you can see gym would be an option. We also have the weight room that might be an option some days. We have other things that are going on. But then there's also specific things for students to choose from. So if I'm in my math class, for instance, and I had math first period and we went over some stuff and I really wasn't sure what we were doing, need some extra help on the homework, I can sign up for my math teacher and I can look in here and find my math teacher that I have. And if I click on that math teacher, it'll show up in this box and I can change the workshop. When I change it up here on the 18th, now that student is being assigned. That's where they're to go. So now it's flexible. They can choose, and they can choose up to a predetermined time that you have. And that's where they would be expected to go during that time. They can make changes all the way up until the predetermined time. But each day, there are options for these students. And the nice thing is with the program, the flexibility is the teachers are the ones in their meetings are generating those options for the students to be able to see. And those options can be different every day. The other thing that's nice about the program is I can, as a teacher, assign students, a certain number of students or however many to a workshop where they cannot opt out of that. So I'm going to close it. They can't choose to opt out of that program. And I can do that for any length of time that we determine as a school or as a teacher staff is needed for that. So that's a little bit about how that SOS system works in terms of having the fluidity that you're looking for, because I can offer based on what my needs are in my particular team. Again, as I go back to the science example, if we're doing balancing chemical equations, and I've got students who don't, if given the equation itself, they have a hard time balancing it, and they're going to need a different specific reteaching than somebody who can balance the equation, but they can't write the formulas down. So you give them the words, they can't write the formulas. There's another step of that. So then I can have one teacher on my team doing that for the students who are struggling with that. And I can have another teacher doing the other part. So now you're maximizing that time based on the teachers owning that process. And that's why it's talking about empowering. You're empowering your staff, your teachers, to meet the needs of students based on what they're seeing in their classroom. They should be reteaching it anyway, but they might have 15 students in their class already get it, and they only need the help of these 3. Now you're wasting class time. Now you can do it during this flex opportunity. And then I can do those however, we empower our teachers to do that. The other thing that's great about the flex time is the students have a feeling of choice. And we know at schools itself, they don't feel like they have a lot of choice. And so by using a flex time and using a system such as our SOS system, that they can then empower themselves to make the choice that they need for that day. And that day, that choice could be different every day. We found that at Ryle, we were a very strong AP program. We found that there was more students who started to take AP classes that maybe not have before because they knew they were going to have an opportunity to get help during the school day. And so that allowed them to then make those choices, knowing that they were struggling, they could see their teacher for that. Looking at some other questions. How often do you reorganize groups? I think that's you and your MTSS, system that you have. I think that you can set up the groups for however long. Obviously, there's best practices in regards to what truly you're trying to do with interventions. With this, our teacher teams can have groups that are meeting differently every day. They could have a group that they might meet with for a specific week. And then as a school, if we want to do more intensive interventions, we might put them in for a 6-week period with that. Here at St. Henry, we've established this recently where we are going to kids that have been failing multiple classes. A lot of them, it's not always their academic ability, it's their executive functioning skills. So they show the academic aptitude, but they're not turning in their work or they're getting overwhelmed. So we are starting an organizational time management program. We've put 4 kids in there, and the way it's going to work is they're going to be in that for 3 weeks. We're going to establish kind of a routine and habits of organizing, planning, making sure they're doing things, and then start phasing them out. And again, the beauty of this system and having the flex time is I can create the opportunities are endless for you as a school to determine what your needs are. So there's one size does definitely not fit all for that. The other thing, with school culture and camaraderie within, we've got a school, Walton, that uses our system, but they have a club day once a week. And so they ask every one of their teachers to have a specific club, and students can sign up for those clubs. And, the research shows that kids who are engaged in their school through various clubs improves the academic piece. And so they've made that a part of what they do with this system. Again, select those, and it can be different each week if they choose to do that. The other question, how do we make it important to students? It's not graded. This is not a graded time. And I tell you, here's what happens. One of the things that's beautiful about our program is if you have a intervention, basically we call it our failure list. If we have a failure list, we got students who are failing classes. With our system, it can keep the students from seeing options that are enrichment. So if I have a gym is open for somebody to go get some exercise during this part of the day, and they're failing a class, they will not see that as an option. So that is an incentive for them to get on the passing list so that they have that option. And as a teacher, so last year I taught in a classroom here at St. Henry, and I know that I had students, so we had a lab report that was due. They turned in the lab, or they forgot to turn in the lab. I would assign them to my flex time. I'm taking their freedom away, and then lo and behold, that assignment was completed. And we were able to do that because that person was more incentivized. It wasn't a grade necessarily, but they were incentivized about getting their free time. And so with the majority of students, that freedom in this flex time to be able to choose their option by empowering the teachers to control that and set up a system of missing work or whatever that is to come in during that time to complete it with that help. A lot of times those students will do that without even having a grade dictated on that. Question, how do you set up an effective system for intervention and enrichment where students are just hanging out? And that's a very good question. The biggest, when you look at those four essential questions in regards to PLC work, what do we want students to know? Teachers are pretty good at aligning those and getting those essential standards and what those are. How do we know they know it? That's the next thing, and that goes to your formative assessments and how you assess students and how often you assess students and what is graded or what not graded, but how are you aligning that with standards? And I feel like those first two things teachers are pretty adept at. When you get to what do we do if they don't know it, that's that reteaching. And determining how to reteach that and how to leverage each other's. That's where you have really good discussions in your buildings on how to do that. And you leverage the leaders of your school in regards to your different teams on how to best do that within their group. What science decides to do may be different than what a math teacher might do or an English teacher might do. And that should be okay as long as they're utilizing that time. Now, in regards to the enrichment part, that is one that's the toughest in regards to really offering those, because a lot of times it's really based on how interested the kids are in that topic. And so you can create different things. Sometimes those school-wide created things might be better than just a specific teacher with enrichment. But it's really, again, the freedom of that teacher to be able to do it. The nice thing is if you want to offer an enrichment opportunity for your science class, your math class, you can offer that, and then students can select to go in there if you feel like, because that means they're choosing to do that. But the other thing is if you have something extra that you want this group to do because they're interested in it, then you can assign those students to you and then offer that as well. But enrichment opportunities, again, is really how the teachers decide to do that. And the system that we have really helps gather that. The length of time for flex, the general rule is you want to have flex time to be at least 30 minutes, ideally 40 to 45 for good intervention time. The 30 minutes, it's all about trying to build it in your class schedule. And that's where, as a leader of your school, a lot of times if you're trying to create a flex period, you've got teachers worry the most about losing instructional time. Totally get that. The thing about instructional time is that what I sell the teachers on is you don't necessarily have to lose instructional time because you're gaining time during this flex to work with the kids who need it the most. And so you should be doing that in your class time anyway. And so by having this time, you're able to do that. But generally speaking, the length of time is 30 to 40 minutes. And to create that time, those options are, when I went to Dixie, we had 4 lunch periods during it was a fourth period. And there was 4 times for lunch, obviously to try and decrease the amount of students in the cafeteria. We were able to reduce that to 3 lunch periods, which gained us some time on that end. And then we also had to reduce the length of time of classes a little bit. But you can get creative with that to be able to develop that time for that. The
Do you have a
where students aren't just hanging out, I found usually enrichment teachers have an issue with planning creative lessons. And I think that is true in terms of the enrichment piece. My son was a gifted and talented student when he was in the elementary levels and going to the middle school. But one of the things, they kept pulling him out to do some enrichment activities. And he said, I just feel like this is extra work. I don't want to do extra work. And so that's why the enrichment piece is a struggle, because some kids, if they are really interested, like we have a robotics class, and then we have as an enrichment part of that, they offer during flex a day for working robotics. So they go in and they work with robots and things like that. So it's not necessarily part of that class, but it gives them an enrichment opportunity to further along with that. So it's really about how you can create those options that are relevant for the students themselves. In my resources, I did provide, because I know if you are trying to start a flex period, or you are trying to enhance your flex period, the research goes and shows. So in my resources, I have what I put together for our team leaders in our building. Talks about the why for PLC work, and then as part of that, why the flex time is needed, and then also how we utilize that. And then we call them ILT leaders. So these are your team leads. For example, if you had an English 2, teachers, and you have an ILT, it's an instructional learning team. And then, so I have an ILT leader handbook, which also does that. If you're trying to persuade your staff to move towards this, having data is very important to show. So when I was at Ryle, we at one point in time had a failure rate of about 15% of our students were failing a class. When we instituted a flex time and then made these adjustments and used this tool, we actually got that down to about 9% within the third year that we were doing it. When I arrived at Dixie, I arrived there, and their failure rate, they were on trimesters. And so a trimester, the trimester is a every 12 weeks, and their failure rate for that was about 25% when I got there. And so in instituting the flex time, within 2 years, we were able to reduce that down to about 16% with that. Now, we also, the second year I was there, COVID hit, things kind of changed a little bit, obviously, with all that kind of stuff with that. The SOS time that was asked, it's not a free application. It is a program that's utilized by schools, so it is paid. There is, and I'll put it in the chat, there is a website that you can go to see how it works. I can show a little bit as well, but it is studentoptimize.com. So I'll put that in there. But it shows some how teachers utilize it, how students feel about it, but also gives you a couple videos on what students see and what teachers see. The big thing is with a flex time, where people have the hardest time is this, and depending on the size of your school. So at Ryle, we are at 1,700 students. At Dixie, we were 1,500 students. Here at St. Henry, we're at 400. But what do you do with all these kids? And so part of that is a management issue, and you got to utilize all your resources. What you're really trying to do is get your workshops that are offered during that flex time to a smaller number, because you want your teachers intervening with smaller numbers, which means you have to have some opportunities for larger areas with that. So, for example, we have a cafeteria that we have, but we have the gym, we have a media center. At Dixie, we had a AB honor roll. So students who are on the AB honor roll would be only kids that would be able to select that area, but we could put 60 kids in the cafeteria as an AB honor roll monitored by one person. Those 60 kids reduces the amount of kids that are going to be someplace else. And generally those kids have a high incentive to be there. They're going to work on their work and do those things. Our media center is open. We held 40 kids in the media center with the teacher. Again, they can go in there, and some kids just need a break. They just want to relax. They don't necessarily need your help, but it is an opportunity for them to do that. You could offer the weight room being open and kids could go, had 20 kids in the weight room, monitored by one person. They're getting some mental health stuff. They're getting to work out during the school day. And you can see that kids are incentivized and empowered by having those options. I think I got everybody's questions that were on there. Does anybody else have any additional questions that or things that they want to talk about? I know getting a flex time into your school day. Hopefully you have one already, and this is an opportunity. I'd love to work with you to figure out how to maximize that time. I feel like through my years of experience, that's something that I'm good at in terms of helping schools examine what they're doing, what their processes are, and how do we maximize that time. But if you're thinking about doing it as well, because of my experience getting it started at 2 schools, here at St. Henry, they already had it established, but we had to adjust some things because it was a little bit of chaos. There wasn't really any organizational tool whatsoever. It was everybody just went where they went, and nobody really knew where anybody was, which was a great safety concern. So the system that we have, the SOS system, is something that helps keep attendance, helps track where kids are. Everybody knows exactly where everybody is at any given time. So I'm happy to help any schools that need any assistance with anything, for sure, on that stuff. Any other questions? I'm going to put in the chat my contact information. It's also on the resources that I gave you, but just so you have it, this is my current email with St. Henry. I'm also in part of the Student Optimized Services website, so I work with them and work with consulting with schools and help with the onboarding process with all that as well. So happy to help in any way I possibly can. Please reach out and talk to me if you need anything.
Well, that was phenomenal, Nate. Awesome. That's I see how that you're being able to make that work. That sounds like a really great option for your high school. I'm not.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just shown, and I didn't really touch on, which I probably should have, but if you have special ed student needs, I mean, the flex time is an incredible opportunity for students with IEPs and things like that, where their case managers can work individually with them with additional time. I mean, we saw at Dixie, we went from being, 6th or 7th in our area in special ed services, test scores, things like that, to being #1 in the region for 2 years in a row. So I think it's definitely the structures you put in place with the flex really help.
That's awesome. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat either, and there are 3 minutes to spare. Well
Hey,
done, sir.
thank you very much.
That's awesome. I am going to drop in the chat the link to the EdCamp evaluation. If you already have it pulled up, you don't need to click on it again. It is one document that you just kind of go through the day. So you can go ahead and click on this session that you did and fill in your comments, but you'll want to submit it at the end of the day to provide that information so that you can get your ELA credit. But if you are finished and no other questions, still not seeing any in the chat, I'm going to